Hello and welcome. I'm Jess Campmans, guided by Equus, with your horse wisdom insights for the week of September 8th. But today this video is being taken on September 10th because of some technicalities of the video that was posted, which involved somehow a switch from normal time into slow motion that made probably what was a 10-minute video into about 30 minutes. And it was funny because I wondered, wow, I was talking for a long time. I didn't realize that was 30 minutes that I was kind of involved with sharing the message. But when I'm in that space, I don't always, it feels kind of timeless, so I never really question it. And I also obviously don't watch my videos all the time, or I would have known that it had slowed down and gone into slow motion. But part of me trusts that whatever needs to come out and be shared is what does. And it feels like as I'm bringing through the message, it's coming through me. And so it's not even necessarily that I always need to go back and watch it. So just taking a breath with all of that. And since that video was posted, there's actually been a lot that has come through in the space with the horses and in life in general since then. And just to acknowledge, I didn't know this, but following a couple threads this morning, today is World Suicide Prevention Day. And really, we're at kind of what we might call kind of a crisis point, even though that's always been there, crisis points that exist, you know, either within inside of ourselves or in the external world, and we are having to move through them. But to acknowledge that today in response to possibly all of these things that are going to be shared in this video. So if you're here, thank you for watching. That means a lot to me that there's views and people that watch these videos. And I guess I'll step back to what was shared through the first video. And I want to acknowledge this right here is Aini. She is my 2021 Palomino filly. And Aini means the art of sacred reciprocity. So to be in a sacred relationship that we're both giving and receiving in a way that is paying it forward. So paying it forward for, well, I guess we would be part of that, but for others and future generations, and the sustainability of relationship. And so that's relationship with everything, with the world, with each other, with everything within our planet and our earth, with the earth itself. And the animals are obviously a big part of that. For me, for sure. And probably for any one of you guys watching. And the horse at the back, Karma there, she is also bringing a message in to represent part of this wisdom that's coming through. Stormy. And then over here I have Fancy and my stallion Coast. So taking a step back to September 8th, for any of you that tried to watch that video, kudos to you, and thank you for those of you who let me know that it didn't really work and kind of time slowed down in that, which is interesting because it actually feels like, even though this was a long weekend and, you know, in reality it was probably a shorter work week than what we're used to. Anyways, for us in North America, that space between Wednesday and today is Friday, actually time has seemed to slow down, especially in context to where we've been, myself anyways, for most of the summer. It seems like one day just rolls into the next, and you hardly have time to catch your breath. And then there's something else that needs to be paid attention to and brought your focus to, that is presenting itself to you to be able to help recognize a choice that we're making. And so what was brought through on September 8th was like a choice point doorway. That day was a 22 master day. So according to numerology, if you add up the numbers of September 8th, 2021, that equaled 22. And 22 is the master builder. And I remember sharing, right, we're the builder of our lives. We're that master builder that when we respond to the number 2 is a unity, a union, a relationship with something else, with us and something. And so when we bring together those relationships, we build our life through relationships, because we are not just doing it on our own. We're always in relationship with something. And we're utilizing a specific energy to connect to the other, whatever the other is. So that felt like a doorway, and I spoke about that a bit. And that earlier on that day, there was a song that kept coming into my awareness, and it was Turn Back Time. And so I spoke a little bit about that song, and what came to me is that we're going back in time to retrieve a piece of information that is actually changing our current living reality. And so you can call that shamanic work, but I believe each one of us have that ability to be shamanic and journey back into our past. Really, that's what healing is acknowledging something that wasn't able to be acknowledged in the past. And as we acknowledge it, it transforms because we've acknowledged it, rather than put it outside of ourselves or hide it or bury it or project it onto someone else. And so I went through a bit of an exercise or a practice, I guess, which this thing that we were connecting to when we turn back time had a piece of our heart broken within that. And so if you use the cliche that where the crack is where the light comes in, but the crack, that heartbreak, is often one of the most painful things we have to deal with. And then we build that wall of protection so that we don't have to encounter that. And that level of pain, whether it's for ourselves or others. But when we do that, we're actually, by creating that wall, we're numbing ourselves to be able to feel that pain. And when you can't allow yourself, when you can't go there to be able to feel one thing, your barometer starts to narrow and your focus becomes very, very much more narrowed than if you were to be able to experience and just be with that pain. Actually gives you the availability to be with that much compassion also. And if our world needs anything right now, it is compassion and the courage to be compassionate and to be able to allow choice and perspective. And so moving this forward, and this feels like it might end up being as long as video, even though it's not in slow motion. So all of that kind of came through. And if you want, just take a breath for a moment and allow all of those words to kind of, if they resonate for you someplace, right now notice where they resonate. I know that day it really hit into my heart, but right now I'm also sensing it like just below my belly button, which is the place of the connection between our power center, our solar plexus, and our sacral chakra, our creativity in the world. And when we have to, when our heart is broken and we have to protect it, we dampen the light of our spirit, the light of our creativity, the light of our ability to be creative, which actually cuts us off from our power, because that is our power, is who we are, that creative sense of bringing through something bigger than ourselves. It's not, at that point, it's not just about us, but that's how we derive our power, is like this power generator connection to that inspiration that lies within us. And so with all of that, I'm also just getting the image of like from the knees down. And so in relationship to that, it's like we have to float above ground, because without that connection to the generator of it, which also, if you use the analogy of like an electric fence, that needs groundedness, that needs a grounding rod stuck into the earth to make it all work properly. And so when we're not grounded, it can become very difficult to utilize any sort of ability to generate our own power and be connected to that inspirational source. And so that feels very metaphysical and out there, but I'll bring it back a little bit closer to home. And I actually walked over here, and there was only 2 of the horses in the shed, and I just thought, well, I'll stay out of the sun so that I'll see what wants to come through in being able to be in this space where the bugs are less also. Which feels too like it's that ability to go into undercover, into the depth, into the darker spaces and places, to be able to come back out and bring it to light, bring it to consciousness. So this thing that we are opening up to this week, when we turn back time and go back into our past timeline to retrieve it, which our past timeline isn't really linear like we might think. And I know for those of you guys watching, I'm sure you recognize this, but it's very cyclical. And so as it cycles, it comes around again and again and again for us to become aware of it and be able to choose something different. But it's interesting because even those words don't land. Like, it's like saying, well, just let go of it. Well, if it was that easy, we would all just let go of all of our past traumas and the world would be a beautiful place. Now, we all know that that hasn't happened yet. So being able to go back and acknowledge what that was. And so here is the story that has unfolded since the last video for myself. And I would just ask you to notice where you notice this helping create connection points for yourself in your own story, because our stories might be all different, but the emotional experiences are what connect us. And when we can have compassion for those emotional experiences that we ourselves have been through, that allows us to have greater compassion for the whole of humanity. And even those who don't recognize themselves in their story yet. And I think like that's a really big piece of the puzzle. And actually, if I won't go there yet. I'll bring this back home first. So this began a couple days ago, shortly after I did the video with karma. I was walking out here, and this feels like it's going to be a really long story, but I'll try and summarize it. I was gifted the opportunity to bring a horse into my life who sired for me 3 horses. I tried to breed many mares, and in the end, he only sired 3 horses, and then he went on in his life and has been part of succeeding in helping bring awareness to people in a way that sometimes is very triggering and sometimes is very honoring. But this horse's particular lineage was a combination of a number of breeding programs that is dying out. He's part of the Foundation Morgan horse, so the foundation of the Morgan horse that was built in the late 1800s and has no outside influential breeding. And this particular horse has been sought after by a number of people or his offspring. And this horse came into my life in 2011. And he has since helped, like his legacy is found throughout my entire herd. But what I've witnessed in this short period that he's been part of my life is that these horses, these offspring of his, and he himself only thrive when the integrity and intentions of the person are in integrity with his legacy. And so that might sound kind of odd, and yet to me it actually doesn't. Because when we're not in integrity with something, there is a disconnect or a dysfunction that happens to bring us back into integrity with ourselves in relationship to the other. And this particular horse is phenomenal at it. I could go on and on about him, and I could go on and on about his offspring, and obviously you can hear the level of emotion that he gifted me with a lot of things. as did his person who gave me the opportunity. And so I'll come back to that in a second, because this piece of opportunity is what some of us might call miracles, that I kind of spoke about in the post about my previous video. And miracles are actually always there waiting for us. It's up to us to let go of the outcome that we need to feel good about something, which actually caps out the other, right? Because we're limited in our perspective. And so if what we think is the potential outcome that we want, often there's something quite a bit bigger and quite a bit broader that we are part of, that we don't even know is possible as an outcome. And this is where miracles come in. And I've witnessed this time and time again through not only this horse's pathway in life, but things and events that unfold, as fallouts from where people are not in integrity. And this is just my own personal story with this. So Karma is a descendant of this horse, one of the three. Noche, my other stallion, is the second one, and there's a third stallion who has found his forever home in what was a beautiful synchronicity. And I knew the second that he was inquired about that is where he's going, because that's his person. That's where he's meant to thrive. So Karma, if you don't know her story, I, probably when I was 15, saw this image of a horse in one of the Morgan Horse publications and knew at that moment that those were the horses that I wanted to create my breeding program around. And I didn't think much of it because I was 15 and I didn't really have a lot of money and I didn't have my own place, and life gets in the way. And then I worked my way through many things. And eventually 2 daughters came into my life who were both relatives of this particular horse, who is now dead. But his legacy is carried on also through this herd. So Karma, this one mare, I have one daughter from her, and that's Karma. And she gave her life to give Karma life, because if you followed me at all, you know this story. Carmelita was in distress during labor, and the vet came out and then realized we would have to do a C-section and we needed to transport them. And upon hearing that, Carmelita knew that both of them would die. So she started pushing and she prolapsed so that we would have to do the surgery now. And that's where Karma came. But in that, I lost Carmelita, who was one of the 2 that I held most dear and had kind of been searching for a good part of my life. She was my childhood dream. So I had one mare, Karma. Karma's legs are kind of, you can't hardly see it right now, but she came out, and from the moment she was born, she was crooked. Her legs didn't stand straight. To me, that didn't matter because I had her. So years down the road, eventually I thought, well, I want to see if it's possible, see what is possible if we breed her, because genetically, this is not a genetic trait. Both her sire and her dam were straight, strong, solid horses, conformationally perfect, or as close as perfect that any conformation can get. And I currently have 2 beautiful fillies who are straight, strong, and as perfect as can be, and another one due next spring. So the gift, when I let go of needing to have a foal, but taking a chance on what if, I was blessed, again, beyond anything that I could have asked for. So how does this come back into the story of this week? There was an inquiry that was a request, and part of the request, and it wasn't really a request that you need to give me that thing that you never thought you would part with. But I recognized the call from something bigger than myself within the request. And as I recognized that, I also knew who it was that would be the one that would be quote unquote sacrificed. Now we think of sacrificing something as like it needs to, like a sacrificial lamb. It's the death of something, which actually metaphorically, it is the death of something, so something else can rise out of that. But not many of us, but there's a big fear about death. I mean, the end of our lives, that's it. We're done on this earth plane, and what else is beyond that, I guess that is for each one of us to determine what we believe in. But if we're here to do something, we actually have many deaths and rebirths in our life, and it's to not be scared of the end so that something new can be born from it. And as I'm walking over to this place where these horses are, this is all kind of hitting me, and that karma is the one that is holding all of this. And I also know she's been very instrumental in the last number of years of helping me recognize pieces inside of myself that I tossed away because they were worthless. And yet those are the pieces that she has also helped me reclaim to be able to stand here and trust in this bigger piece that we're all part of. And that we bring, when we find those pieces and bring them back for ourselves, we're actually helping humanity, the entire world, the earth, the cosmos, the universe, everything. Because we can only do this for ourselves, really and truly. We can be there for someone else, and we can stand alongside them and support them, but unless they want to do it for themselves, thank you, Fancy, we can't force anything. Anything beautiful cannot be forced, and the beauty comes when we make that choice. So back to karma. As I was coming over here, it came to me, karma kind of shared this wisdom with me, that once you understand this on a felt sense level, meaning like you've embodied this understanding, this wisdom, you no longer need me. You've set me free because you understand that you don't need me. You will always have me as not only the wisdom, but the availability to let things go. And as you let them go, they become sacred. And that is the legacy. So as I came, I'm still walking, I get here, and this is all kind of coming to me. And I hope I did it justice in putting that together in words, because it doesn't really come in through words. It comes in through a lot of different ways and forms, but to help it make sense. And so I got here and I was just kind of overwhelmed by it. Thank you, Karma. And then Karma came around the corner. And then shortly after that, like within less than a minute, I didn't feel my phone buzz, but I just felt the need to check it. And there was a message that had been delivered kind of almost simultaneously with all of this, that the gift in this is being able to realize that we're never losing something, especially when we're in integrity with the reasons why this thing is in our life. So there was that piece. And then it feels like there's one more piece to this story. I'm just having to remember everything that's actually happened, because it really feels like it's true, is that time has slowed down for all of these lessons to kind of come into being in a way that is helping all of this make sense. And I know that's been one of the things lately, is none of this in the world is making sense. Like, pick a thing you want to speak about. There's so much confusion and chaos around many issues that we're all dealing with, and it doesn't make sense. And so I love that I just said that, because it feels like coming back to, and that's what it is. It's coming back to ourselves and what makes sense for us, and being able to stand in that space and trust in ourselves. Oh yes, thank you. Okay, so the last piece of this puzzle was Noche. So Noche is the other offspring that I got in this trio of horses. I've started riding him more lately, but we get to a point where he refuses to go forward, and I am well equipped to make a horse go forward, but this horse is extremely powerful. His soul wisdom is honoring, so I know that by forcing him to go forward, that would be a dishonor to him and myself. So the other night, he stopped and he wouldn't move, and he started pawing with his right front foot, and he kept reaching around and touching my right foot. And I kind of unconsciously got off, and I said to him, okay, you win. And then I was like, you win. If I won, we would all lose, because I would be in a fight with you. I would probably get bucked off, and then I would not feel good, and we would have broken our trust between each other. And I realized, when you win, we all win, because I have to find another way. Or I have to find the wisdom within why you won't go forward. Now, he goes forward 100% fine when I'm not on his back, and he'll go forward up to the point where he stops and will not go forward because something needs to be addressed. So coming back to what he gave me as a gift through that experience, was that long ago during my accident, and again, if you followed me for a while, I had a horse accident 2 weeks before my 8th birthday where I came off and I got kicked in the head and I went unconscious. And then 2 years later, that same horse ran his chest and his heart into a steel pole and died. That's really the shortened version of it. But what came through from tuning into this right side of all of this was that the words, I took the blame. Now, why does anybody have to take the blame for an accident? Nobody really does. But as I followed this trail of intuitive points that were just leading me, intuitive breadcrumbs, I realized that after the accident had happened, those words, take the blame, and it was my want, my desire to go out and go riding early that Sunday morning that, quote unquote, caused the accident, even though it wasn't. But when you're young, maybe that's what I felt. I'm not too sure, but whatever it was, that's what came up for me, that I took the blame. And so when you take the blame for something, you could call it taking responsibility, but that's not, as a child, how you do that. You don't link those two and be responsible for the accident, even though on a soul level, this was part of something bigger than myself. And so when those words hit me this morning, I came in and I asked my husband, did you guys ever use that phrase, take the blame? And he kind of thought about it for a moment, and he said, well, I know I've heard it, but I wouldn't say that we used it a lot. And to me, it felt like that was, and now, again, my siblings might not agree with this, but our experience of something is our experience of something, and how we interpret life in relationship to how we've grown up and who we are. So I took the blame for this accident that was, no one was to blame. But when you take the blame for something, for that thing that you love doing, that also means that you're at fault for that thing. So bring this all back, this sense of being blamed for the accident, even though no one was blaming me, that I blamed myself for my choice to love horses, to want to go riding, to want to be outside in nature on an early Sunday morning, to be inspired. All of those things that I just shared, I blamed myself for. And that's informed everything that I do. And Noche was helping me become conscious of that, because I can't move forward if I'm still at fault or to blame for these things that are very integral and intrinsic to me, not only as a human being, but for sure on a soul level. This is what I came here to do. So just taking a breath and kind of bringing that all back into the here and now and into context. And I can see that it is a full 30-minute video, but that's okay. It's funny how that I was sharing about what was going to happen this week, and then for me, went back into the past, retrieved this piece of information to help create an emergence of something better. There's one more piece to this that I was sharing with my son about, and it was about giving up, because when I would be challenged by something, I would give up. If I was very good at many things, and if I wasn't good at it, I just gave up and I went back to the things I was good at, until this started when I was snowboarding. I took up snowboarding even though I was really good at skiing, and I refused to take up snowboarding for quite a while because I knew I wouldn't be good at it and I would have to learn, and I would be in that beginner stage. And so when we give up a challenge, we're not only giving up having to move through the difficulty of that challenge, we're also giving up something that is very unique and intrinsic to us, and something that we love and is part of us, because we don't like that sacred reciprocity relationship. We don't just give up the hard things, because when we don't, I don't want to use the word don't, when we are unwilling to accept the challenge to become better, and when we are challenged, something always better comes out of it. Always. It's never a failure, even if there's a win and a loss, kind of like my story with Noche. When he wins, we are all going to win. If I try and win, him and I will lose. Well, no, I will lose, and I will have lost his trust. So kind of like that, when we're presented with a challenge, which is, we're being presented with a lot of challenges right now, to be able to embrace them for what they are presenting to us, will actually help us regain a piece of ourselves that we gave up somewhere in the past. And so I want to kind of bring this video to a close this week, and I guess bring it back home one more time to honoring. Noche's soul wisdom is of honoring the Suicide Prevention Day. It is part of all of our lives in some way, shape, or form. And I love that these two just put me between them. And they were actually just touching noses to bums. So it's like creating a circle, creating a sacred circle to be able to not only witness with compassion, but honor people for where they are at with their choices and where everybody's at right now, which can be one of the most difficult things to do. If that's the challenge we're all faced with right now, that ability to recognize that everybody's doing their best and not, and again, bringing that back around to the blame, to not utilize this time to either need to take the blame or put the blame on someone else, but to just really hold space for yourself in all of this, because the more you can hold space for yourself, the more you can actually do it for everyone around you as well, even though what might be happening is not what you wish to see, and it might look hopeless, and it might look so conflicting, and it might look confusing. We're really being asked to come back to center and to find that authority within us, that power to stay true to ourselves despite what's going on around us, which can be one of the most difficult things we can do right now. And yet, that is the thing that will help us get through to where we need to go. because I don't know if anyone can actually look forward and say, well, we're going here, because we're creating where we're going right now when we decide to focus on what is right for us, and become that authority for ourselves in relationship to compassion, because at the end of the day, that's all we can offer each other. And so with that, I wish all of you guys much love from Stormy and Karma, and those other guys moved out for now, moved on. And stay tuned for more horse wisdom insights from myself and an unfolding of more from Guided by Equus.